Hey, I'm Justin.
This is Chaz.
Join us as we look back together, but learn to stay present.
Come with us as we rise up with hope on the horizon.
This is the podcast of extraordinary millennial gentlemen.
Interested to hear.
Yeah.
It seems like I think it's been a couple weeks since we've done one of these, but yeah,
yes.
What have you been consuming? What's on your consumption
Wow.
list?
Well, I've got to tell you, this is kind of a sneak peek. I've got today's Mentor Minute, and I am consuming, in every sense of the word, a book by Jim Mattis called Call Sign Chaos. And if you guys don't know who Jim Mattis is, he's a former Secretary of Defense under current administration. And he has an amazing history. He is a Washingtonian, so he's right up here in Washington State.
Yeah.
But that aside, he is just a leadership guru with decades of hard-fought, literally, experience through Desert Storm, Operation Iraqi Freedom, and the ongoing struggles in Afghanistan and Iraq. So loving it. I'm putting it in my top 5 leadership books.
That's cool.
Yeah, I'm going to call it mandatory reading for my my team.
Yeah. How'd you come across it? Did it get referred to you? Is it referenced by another book?
That's a great question. I think it was just that happenstance of eclectic search.
Gotcha.
So can't give credit to another book. I think, as you know, and you guys know, if you've been listening consistently, I am kind of all over the place with genres, topics.
Yeah.
I kind of have a hard time taking one author and just reading their full works.
Yep.
I don't really have any authors that I do that with. But anyway, enough of my ranting about that. More on that in the Mentor Minute. What have you been consuming? It's been a while, like you said.
Oh man, yeah. What have I been consuming? I have been watching a bit more YouTube. A little bit more YouTube.
Okay.
Rick Shields, his golf channel. I've enjoyed that. Trying to get some tips and some tricks out there for the course.
Nice.
Which I've only been out maybe once recently. And I also another YouTuber picking up, maybe some tricks of the trade, but also just for my Mac use. Snazzy Labs, we'll put it in the show notes, but he's got always some fun stuff coming out, like his recent ones. He built a super silent gaming PC. So that was cool to see. He, just overcooling with the right fans, but then controlling it in the BIOS so that it doesn't, speed up and take off to the moon.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
But he was able to control it. So it was like pretty much silent while it was under load.
Nice.
I don't know if I could get some of those settings from mine. Anyway, when I render these videos and stuff, it definitely spins up super fast. I feel like it's a rocket heading into space. So anyway, just keeping up on some content I haven't had time to consume before.
Yeah.
But I mean, when I say this, it's like I may get 1 or 2 shows a week of, the 10 to 15 minute YouTube clips. But that's been nice. It's been fun. Other than that, just kind of staying busy with some projects.
Same.
But I would say most recent consumption was some camping out at a campground, obviously. Spent some time out there in nature, made some fires, cooked some things, went some fishing, did some fishing, kayak fishing. First time I've done kayak fishing.
Dude, I'm jealous.
So that was fun on the Mississippi River.
Mississippi?
The dirty Mississippi.
You were down on one of them there rafts in the Mississippi.
Yeah,
hey, nobody can throw shade. I'm from South Carolina, just so you know. I don't want anybody from the old South saying that we're a bunch of Yanks. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Anyway, but that was super fun spending time out in the water. Didn't catch anything, but fun to teach the little guy, kind of his major first fishing trip. And then to bring the kayaks out, it was just great. So
yeah,
good times.
I like it. I like it. Yeah, we did some of that pretty recently as well. We were out, meaning consuming nature,
Mm-hmm.
out at the beach, ocean shores of Washington.
Yeah.
It was a like crappy day in terms of
Mm-hmm.
weather, but you know what? It's like any day at the beach, crappy
Yeah.
weather or not. It's a
Yeah.
good time. Our kids had a great time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I remember being out west for school, and we'd be able to go on these ski trips up the
Mm.
mountain for school. Like you could get permission to go skiing and not have to do your work for that day. It was amazing. And you would be up there sometimes in blizzards and be skiing or snowboarding or whatever. And it was like the worst day on the slopes was still better than the best day in school.
There
So
you
it was
go.
kind of one of those for I think that, plays well for the beach and stuff.
Yeah,
So,
man. Yeah, so
right.
we endured that, had a great time.
Awesome.
So we're
Yep.
talking about Radiohead today, and the album that we picked, kind of by happenstance, just kind of randomly, I would say,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
is The Bends. Baby's Got the Bends. So quick facts, and then I want to
Yeah.
get your take overall on the
Sure.
album.
Yeah. I'm interested to hear
So
some deets.
yeah, the Hot and Fastest came out in 1995. It was recorded in 94, but 95, 25 years old.
I
Okay.
did not expect that.
Dude,
That
it
seems
does not sound that way at all.
no. No,
Okay.
it seems like this is way more not super recent, but I was thinking maybe 10 years, not
There's
25.
there's some timelessness to some of these tracks.
Mhm.
I definitely
Yep.
agree. So
Yep.
95, this is, I think, the third album, studio album that Radiohead put out. This is a pretty critical one. In 93, they put out Pablo Honey, aka "Cause I'm a Creep." So
Yeah, Creep. If you know Creep, that's
there you go.
probably
So
the
that
one
was
of the popular.
93.
Yeah.
After the Bends in 97 was OK Computer, where there was a whole soundscape and kind of departure. So 95, this album, kind of a launching, not for the band, but maybe for a sound, maybe
Yeah.
for
Their unique
some
sound. Yeah.
I don't know, genre breaking. Okay, I'm diving too much into my opinion on it. I want to hear your thoughts on the album first.
I mean, overall, for me, re-listening to it, I was just like, yeah, I really like some of these tracks on
Mhm.
here. Like you said, it's maybe less unknown. It's not the most popular, but there's some good ones in there. Not the whole thing. I would
Not on the radio. You wouldn't have
Yeah.
heard them on
right.
top 40
It's stuff
pop
you
or
just
anything.
like. I don't know. I just got into the jams. I don't always know the lyrics, like what he's
Yeah.
saying, but the beat, the tune, the kind of chillness of some of these. Yeah, I just enjoyed it. The ones that I liked. I wouldn't say I liked them all.
Let's talk that elephant in the room. You kind of alluded to it.
Yeah.
Okay, so Tom York on this album, some critics at the time were like, this dude is a stumbling, mumbling seed.
Yep.
And I think that there are people at the time when it was released really said, hey man, that's his style. And just listen to the music. But then you had other people who were like, no, I want to understand every lyric and its context. I want to hear the chorus
Yes.
enunciated. And so I think there's a group out there who were like, holy mumbles, can't tell what the guy's saying. What's your thought on that?
I do think it falls into a type of, I've heard it from other artists is why I'm saying this. I've heard other artists do this and they keep doing it. Now whether that I don't think that's mainstream, but it definitely has a niche with certain listeners where I think there is this classification out there where, unless they take that feedback and then they totally change and they, you can hear everything they say. Kind of in contrast to our last album we reviewed where it was like, man, this guy's rattling off things super clear.
Yeah.
And super fast.
At a high rate. That's right.
Yeah. At an incredible speed. This is definitely the Blurred, right? I don't know I didn't look forward to his like current stuff or the most recent from Radiohead. So I don't know if they've changed that, but I would say, yeah, they're kind of trying to fit into this, blah, blah, mumbly jumbly, cool.
I'd say
chillax zone.
If I could put it one way, I would say it's stylistic
Yeah.
to Tom York. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
is it unique, meaning like unprecedented? No.
No.
But
Yeah.
I
Others
think
are doing
it's
it.
unique to his voice, his tone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I got some take a little bit later on
Okay.
some influences,
Mm.
but maybe more importantly, those who I think who artists now or bands that came after that were very, very heavily influenced.
Yeah.
It was weird. It was like some musical deja vu where I could see other artists sitting in their cars, sitting in their rooms, listening to this album. And I thought
Yeah.
that's totally who influenced these guys, this
Yeah.
album specifically.
Yep. Yeah, I
So
could see that. Oh, and for
let me give you my,
95, I mean, that
yeah,
has time
95.
to influence a lot of the up and coming stuff,
Yes.
right?
So that really leads into what my take is on this overall on this album. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like there's two sounds on this album. And maybe that's
Mm,
oversimplistic, but for
sure.
everybody out there, just bear with me. I would say I'm arguing with myself over the last
Mm-hmm.
week. I think there's actually three sounds, but I'm going to say there's two. And then one kind of has a subcategory. So the
Okay.
one sound I hear crystal clear in this album on different tracks is kind of this 90s alternative / grunge,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
A lot of reverb, wop, 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 wop,
Mm-hmm.
power chords, and still with those kind of stylized vocals,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
But I hear kind of grunge. It's still that era, okay?
Yeah.
And then the second sound that I hear that kind of has a sub sound, what I'm kind of calling like a soundscape,
Okay.
where it sounds really open. It sounds like there's a ton of space, and it's almost instrumental.
Mm-hmm.
And even the tone of the vocals is almost still kind of fitting in this kind of instrumental, and they're haunting,
Yeah.
right? As opposed to kind of like you kind of get in that 90s grunge.
Yeah.
This soundscape kind of pre-electronic sound, indie kind of sound is very haunting. Okay.
Yep.
So the subcategory I would give to that is specific kind of soundscape. So there was kind of an electronic soundscape,
Mm-hmm.
and then haunting vocals, and then there was kind of some acoustic version of that. So yeah, I felt like it was maybe three different albums,
Mm-hmm.
not because there were tracks, but there was not just like one track on there that I couldn't fit in one of those categories. Maybe I'm a really poor music critic, and I'm not trying to be critical of the music, but I just see this feels like an in-between album of leaving grunge and entering something else.
Gotcha.
That's
Yeah.
kind of my take.
Okay. I can
Could
see
you
it 'cause
see that? Do you agree? Do you
I
disagree?
can see that. I do feel it was like very split. Like
Yeah.
you were like, oh, we need to throw an album together. Well, we've written these and we're starting to go this direction.
Do you wonder if somebody wrote some of the songs and somebody else wrote the other songs?
it
I
could
kind of
be
feel that way too.
split that,
I wonder.
or it was a very like, well, we wrote these songs and they weren't on the last album. And that was like a year and a half ago. And now we're starting to produce this new sound.
Yeah.
But it's been a while. We need to make some money. Not that these are bad songs or like it. We just need, let's put something out there, right? It's been
Round
too
out
long
the
or
album.
something, right? Yeah, let's push these out
so
that they get
I know,
a voice or something.
I know
Maybe.
Radiohead as I don't know everything
Mhm.
about the band, but I know in this era they didn't have some kind of, you know, backup singer, second vocals,
Mhm.
rhythm that's trying to take the place. There's no kind of like two lead singers in this.
Yeah.
So Tom York is a definite, firm,
Mhm.
consistent lead and voice in the band. But I really wonder in songwriting, it just sounds like two entities. It just sounds like
Mm.
two personalities. Like
Yeah.
I said, arguably three if
Yeah.
you drink my Kool-Aid, but it's very regimented. It stays in a pocket
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
entire time. And it's that wop, 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 that reverb on
Mhm.
those guitars, a lot of snare, tap, tap, you know, So in contrast,
Seems it's almost, I might throw minimalist out there for like the band,
I
right?
like it.
Just very,
I would agree.
guitar. He's got maybe a reverb pedal and he's got a
Yep.
drummer and just, hey, we're chilling. We're
And Tom York's doing his things. He's just kind of floating around, right?
Yep.
All right. Now I want you to go to Nice Dream. This is one of my favorite tracks, period.
Yep.
Next, I've actually got two for to keep going kind of with the broader soundscape.
Yeah.
Bulletproof, or I Wish I Was Bulletproof. I guess maybe this discussion with you is probably starting to convince me that really soundscape's the wrong word. I think it's getting more of like indie. It's just getting more of like harder to define, even though, like I said, I feel like there's these firmly rooted tracks that are 90s grunge.
Yep.
And then, like you said, that's still some of their like guitar and their drum and kind of their bass, which kind of feels non-existent in a lot of the tracks.
In a lot of bass, yes.
Yeah, that's still the foundation they have. But I feel like Tom York all of a sudden on these last couple tracks and epitomizing street spirit. It's just like, okay, now we're departing. We have left.
Yeah, and much more of a vocal focus. I definitely felt the openness you were talking about. But what's that last one you had?
Street Spirit, yeah. And everybody, all you millennials should know this very well, this track.
Yeah. Do you have any info on like their age and stuff at this time? Like I know last one was like right out of high school.
That's interesting. That's an interesting question.
Because it seems like, you said this is their third album.
Yeah.
So they've got some established.
I don't think, to answer your question,
kind of finding themselves a bit.
No, I agree. I can totally hear that. And the other thing, maybe someday we'll do an album review on this one, but in 97, when they came out with OK Computer, that was full into kind of a AI, very stylistic, electronic sound that those themes are rock solid in OK Computer, where I feel like they touch those a little bit. They're emerging into that in this album.
Refining kind of at that step.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
But how old were they? I would say these guys were not touring in the 80s and 70s.
Yeah.
So I think they were probably pretty young bucks at this time.
Yeah.
Okay, that's my rant. That's my rant of I hear two sounds. I hear contrast. I hear pretty deep contrast. But I love the album.
Yeah.
Still.
Yeah, it's one I kind of used it when I was hitting the treadmill or getting outside for a run. Like some of those songs they've just got your mind can kind of wander. You don't have to really focus on the lyrics. You've got some good beats, something that would keep a medium pace. Like if you're trying to, it's not going to be your hit song, right? Or your power song, like when you need to power through the end of the mile,
when you hit the
whatever,
hill, bottom of the hill.
Hit the hill. You don't want that as a power song, but it's one to have in your loop. Yeah.
So that's fascinating to me because I identified there are two tracks, and we don't need to repeat them, but there are two tracks. One we've already played, which is Street Spirit. There's literally a timed beat and measure kind of metronome style in the intro and in the background of the entire song. And that track obviously is Street Spirit with the repetitive guitar lick. I mean, it might as well have been recorded once and layered,
Oh yeah.
In 95, could they have done that? It depends if they were digital. I doubt they were. And then the other end is Planet Telex, which you'll remember Planet Telex has like the, like the sonogram heartbeat, almost that white noise machine, child's heartbeat.
Yeah.
And those two can just continue with that metronome. Like I said, so it's interesting, but all the other albums are that like, all right, turn the amp up, crank up the effects.
Yeah.
Blah. Like long strokes. Blah, 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 Just so interesting to contrast on the album to me. Here are some influences I felt like I heard in the album. I felt like I heard some U2 in there. And
Mm,
even though Tom York versus Bono sounds like a world of difference, like
yeah.
two different sides of the Grand Canyon,
Mm-hmm.
stylistically, I felt like I could hear some U2 in
Yeah.
this album.
I'm not super well versed with U2 as much.
Mhm.
Like I probably know their hits. So
No, no, that's what I'm saying.
yeah.
I kind of heard some of that
Mm-hmm.
same guitar, kind of like, you know what? I'm
Yep.
going to play the guitar as like a rhythm more than anything else. Just kind of a
Mm-hmm.
repetitive rhythm, which is kind of a U2 thing.
Yeah.
And then I think they were probably also influenced by like REM and some of these
Mm,
bands that up until the 90s, maybe even after, you really couldn't put a genre to anyway.
oh yeah.
Kind of
REM
the
is.
early indie
Yep.
type sound.
I
And
agree.
then
I agree with that one.
same thing with some British bands that were early indie, like the Smiths. And if you guys haven't heard of the Smiths, go back
Yep.
80s, 90s. You'll actually hear a lot of tracks that other bands covered in the 90s and 2000s that were originally a Smiths
Hmm.
song. They were kind of indie before there was indie.
Yeah.
Okay, this might get an argument out of some people, but just bear with me.
Yep.
Who were some bands that I feel like were influenced by this album or by
By
Radiohead, right? So
Radiohead.
now we're getting into
Okay.
like late 90s,
Yeah.
2000s. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There are entire tracks on this album that I felt like could be covered by Muse
Mm.
100%.
Yep. Yep.
And it almost feels like Muse stole some of this sound. Now, when I say stole, I know in the industry that sounds really terrible,
Mm-hmm.
but heavily, heavily influenced.
Yeah.
So I encourage everybody, if you're listening along with this podcast or you're going to listen to it this week and pick up the bins and listen to it, listen for Muse. You will hear Matthew Bellamy, the lead singer of Muse, in
Yeah.
these tracks by Tom York.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Well, I do know when I play, my music, where it generates my own list, when I pick my Radiohead or Muse channels,
Yeah.
they intermix the two, right?
Got it.
So it's computer wise or whatever algorithms running this, they're grouping these two together for sure I could see, some of those links there.
So this one might be a little bit of a stretch, but again,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, bear with me because
Mhm.
stylistically they sound very different.
Sure.
But I felt like I could hear some of Mumford and Sons
Hmm.
in this album.
I'm gonna have to
Also, a
go-
little bit of a mumbler.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to like go and listen to some of these as well. Kind of
Yeah,
add my listening.
and maybe to clarify, I was some slower tracks of Mumford and Sons
Mhm.
in some of these Radiohead
Yeah. It's not gonna be, like,
slower
everything.
soundscapes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Certain
No,
ones just kind
Not
of
to
kick it
extent.
off, and you're like, oh, that reminds me of this other group. Yeah.
Yes. And last but not least, maybe right up there with Muse with artistic influence,
Mm-hmm.
Coldplay.
Yeah.
Coldplay. Now, I think Coldplay took a pop direction, and carved
Yeah.
that space out where I felt like maybe this album, The Bins, was probably the last that
Mhm.
Radiohead kind of did that because you don't hear them on the radio
Right.
after this album. And they dive deeper into their own development. That's not necessarily radio friendly. And I don't mean because of censorship. I just mean, they're making 9 and 10-minute songs
Mm-hmm.
that are more that soundscape and eclectic, where Coldplay is like, I can take some pieces of that and
Yeah.
turn
make
that
it
into
popular and
yes.
3-4 minute max. Yeah.
So did I start any arguments with you? What do you think?
No. For me, it started more of a wow. I need to go look up some of these other bands because I just don't know them that well. I again probably will recognize their top songs,
Yeah.
and those probably aren't the ones that you're thinking of that link to the other ones. So
Not necessarily. Okay.
yeah, so I'm behind the curtain here, just being like, okay, yeah.
Well,
I
it's
can
my
see
own
it, it
crazy
makes
dark
sense.
that.
Coldplay to me, because I know that one the most. That does make sense to me. Like at least they're they're in the same group. It'd be interesting to see if these bands were all if we had some massive timeline of here's when all these releases of these different albums for
Yeah.
these to kind of again I'm kind of a data geek. I
Well,
just love that. But
between Coldplay and Mumford, Radiohead and this album specifically predates each of them as far as their major recordings.
okay,
Let me drop this one, last one. Not a new artist that I mentioned or adding to
yeah,
the list, but if everyone out there, there's a track on the Bends called Black Star. Close your eyes and listen to Black Star and imagine that you're at a Muse concert. It will blow your mind. Our theory, yeah, that would be crazy. Which is the bigger band now? Anyway, there's so
yeah.
many more questions I have musically. That's why I love these album reviews, because just like you're experiencing, I experienced the same thing. Just how does this sound fit into that time period? How does
Yep.
it fit into today's artists and their influences? And what do I enjoy about the album? So it's a pleasure. It's a
Yeah.
pleasure to go over these with you.
Yeah, I wonder how open these if not that we could maybe get one of these bands on and talk to them, but if we could, or if on their websites or whatever they had my younger influencers, and so it would be sweet to see some of these like pop up on there.
Right.
If they're like, yeah, no, I
I'd
listen
love
to
to be
music all the
right,
time, right? Yeah,
but
exactly.
I'm also okay to be wrong.
Confirm.
My pea brain of music, not claiming to be an expert, but a keen ear for all things millennial.
Yes, very good. Awesome. No, I love the rant.
Yeah.
Love that. Again, good music out there. Let us know some albums that you're interested in, future albums you'd like us to review, and we'll get them on the list. Yeah. Or albums you'd love to listen to. Yeah, let us know.
Please let us know. So
All
good.
Right.
So
All
good.
Right. Hit me with the Mentor Minute. What do you got today?
All right, everybody. So like I mentioned at the beginning of today's episode, I am consuming voraciously a incredible book on leadership, a little bit of military history, but absolutely autobiographical. I happen to work for a company that works hand in hand with the military as a contractor to the government, private company. I've never served in the military. I am not trying to make my life cool. If any of you guys have heard, cliches like that, I appreciate our men and women of our armed services. I work with them every day. I happen to agree with a lot of the great leadership that have come from the ranks of the military, and oftentimes heavily influenced the private sector. Jim Mattis is one of those people to me. And so here's a quote. And Chaz, I think you're going to love this one. Everybody else out there, you may not. You may find yourself on the wrong side of this quote, okay? But I think it's really important to remember this, whether you're in the military, whether you're in the private sector, whether you are hungry and trying to find your way in your organization, in your career, or if you're taking a full step back because of COVID, because of life, and you're deciding what you're going to be doing as the next step. All right, here it is. Jim Mattis, call sign Chaos. If you haven't read 100 books, you are functionally illiterate, and you will be incompetent because your personal experiences alone aren't broad enough to sustain you.
Wow.
And actually, I threw out.
That's strong.
I threw out a miss. I misspoke. Let me start it over. If you haven't read hundreds of books, you are functionally illiterate. You will be incompetent because your personal experiences aren't broad enough to sustain you. All right, Chaz.
Wow.
First thoughts on that?
I mean, yeah. So audience, hopefully, I could see some people like being offended by that. Not gonna lie. Hundreds of books. I mean, I look back to myself, maybe, years ago. I was never a reader as a kid. Right. I didn't really pick up reading or like reading or even have interest. I mean, I did it when I had to for reading class in junior high, high
Hmm.
school, whatever
Sure,
I had
sure.
to do to get the
Part
job
of
done.
curriculum.
I
Yeah.
read those books. I didn't enjoy them. It wasn't until college that I really was like, well, there's a lot of stuff out there that I can gain from these books. And then,
Yeah.
I shot off like rocket. Like I probably have, oh, I know I have over 100, maybe over 200 in just Audible alone.
Hmm.
So I like it, like you said, I like it for those reasons. And I would completely agree that the things my mind has been open to and the experiences from other people, even fiction or nonfiction,
Hmm.
it's broadened my mind. And so I think, from that standpoint, what do you say? Incompetent? Was that the word at the
He
end?
says yes, and for everybody to clarify, he's really providing like a warning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you find yourself on the wrong side of this equation, then equals
Yep.
in the future, you will be in the future, you'll be incompetent. You'll be tested.
Yeah. It's,
And as
yeah.
a
I like the idea of the warning more than it's not trying to label someone and say,
no,
these people have read, they're smarty pants, these people are incompetent, and I'm putting a label on both of them.
no,
No, it's like, hey, look at
it's
where
coming
you're
from a
at.
place of wisdom
Yeah. And
saying
teaching, like a
you
teaching.
will be tested.
Mhm. You
So
need these experiences from other people.
once again, military, whatever your background is, if you've served, thank you for your service. If you haven't served, thank you for supporting the military. If you don't support the military, you're totally open to your opinion. But I will tell you again, this person's perspective is when you are tested in the future, real lives are at stake, real livelihoods are at stake. And as everybody out there have ambition to lead, eventually those will be in your hands, in your organization's hands. So all roads lead to that. And I think that you're agreeing with this. You and I have a similar opinion on this. We try and live our lives in a similar way where we try and consume. That's why we have that minute, that portion of the show, everybody, because we're interested in what the other person's learning. But I would tell you that whether it's fiction or nonfiction, stories and um, stories and metaphors and even facts and histories teach. They train your brain. And it's amazing how you can recall. You may not be able to retain. I suck at retaining. I really do. I read so many books. I
Yep.
enjoy it. It
Right.
sparks an interest in me in
Yep.
other subjects.
Right.
There's no question that when you asked for this book in particular, Call Sign Chaos, if I
Yep.
had been referred to me by another book or another author, and it happened to have not,
Mm-hmm.
but oftentimes I kind of go
Right.
that direction and associate, pick topics, pick books, pick authors based on other things that I read. But it's true in leadership. You will need to recall maybe something from Harry Potter, maybe something from the Bible, maybe something from the Quran, maybe something from the history of the Civil War. But I can tell
Yep.
you one thing: you will often not recall things from a textbook.
Oh yeah.
If you can recall things from a biography, from a history, from science fiction,
Mm-hmm.
and there's something that exercises in your mind and in your soul when you read as opposed to just viewing, or when you're listening and able to process as opposed to your eyes on the screen.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna piggyback a little bit here because same idea from a different perspective, different book
Hmm.
actually. I'm consuming this book from Lee Kuan Yew. He was like the main guy that turned Singapore from a first world country into a third world country, and
Oh,
he is
nice.
like
Okay.
an amazing, well respected by many countries. He often meets with almost every president. I don't even know if he's still alive, but I got his book. I'm nearly done with it, and he was talking about how if there is not this continual learning cycle or interest in lifelong learning, that in 5 to 10 years, those people that cannot learn or adapt to these new skills that are needed for industry, that technology is already on this this curve that is shooting, it's an exponential curve, just shooting straight up. So we're going to have so many more breakthroughs in the next, handful of years.
Absolutely.
That continual learning piece and adaptability has got to be there. So I think it piggybacks very well on this idea where we need to be learning from these other books, from whatever, keep up with technology, these types of things. And I mean, that's where the world economic stuff, that's where that's all going.
I couldn't agree more. I'll say this in closing. I kind of threw this word out there while you were referring to that book and your experience with that book. And that is, for everybody out there, there's something about the brain, the eyes, the ears, when you're able to use your own imagination, critical thinking as you're listening or as you're reading a book, that doesn't happen when you're watching a screen. It doesn't happen in the same way. And if you'll read books, listen to audiobooks, share them, discuss them, and stick with them, you're avoiding what I think comes from just binge watching, which I think is just atrophy. You're actually not learning more. Maybe you're learning more about pop culture, about influencers. That's a hard word to say. But I'm telling you, I completely agree with General Mattis. When it comes to leadership, those references, pop culture references, those won't get you there. When you need to think critically and recall perhaps lessons learned from others. So I'm not telling everybody to get out there and grab a textbook. Trust me, there are plenty of books out there that I have a very, very hard time even picking up, and I'll put them back down and find another one. But I just encourage everybody, especially those who are hungry for leadership experience, to read and consume and listen to the experience of others, and it'll sustain you later. Boom. Love that. Yeah. And I'm not even through the book. Can't wait to finish.
Well, everybody out there, let us know maybe what you're reading, what you're consuming lately.
Absolutely.
Books, give us some referrals, refer to, other people in the audience. Let us know what's happening. And we'll check out some of the books. Maybe they'll be on one of our, next book reviews.
Everybody, thank you for spending the time with us today. We hope you liked today's podcast. Make sure you like and you hit subscribe as well. Share it with your friends. Share the hope. Rise up with us. We'll see you soon.